Roberto, a man whose life always seemed to revolve around meetings, contracts, and numbers, left the corporate building with a furrowed brow. The weight of daily responsibilities tightened around his chest, like a tie that never loosened. To clear his mind, he decided to walk through a nearby park, a small oasis of calm in the midst of the urban chaos. The sound of leaves rustling in the wind and the distant murmur of conversations brought him a brief moment of peace. As he walked, his eyes caught something unusual. Under a large tree, a boy sat quietly on the grass with a serene expression, watching life pass by. In the midst of people rushing back and forth, the boy seemed calm, unaffected by the world's haste. Roberto stopped, intrigued. "What's a kid doing here alone?" he thought. As he got closer, he noticed the simplicity of the boy's clothes. A familiar impulse took over Roberto. He always solved problems with money. That's how he helped. That's how he made a difference. Without hesitation, he pulled out a large bill from his wallet and offered it to the boy. "Hey kid, why don't you take this and buy yourself something nice?" Lucas, with the same calm expression, looked at the extended bill, but his eyes soon met Roberto's. He didn't smile or frown, he just shook his head slightly. "No, thank you," he said softly, with a calmness that unsettled Roberto more than he was prepared for. The refusal was a silent blow that echoed inside Roberto. What did that mean? How many times had he solved things like this? Why would this boy, who had so little, turn down something that so many would fight to receive? The world around them continued, but for Roberto, everything seemed to freeze in that moment. Still confused, Roberto insisted, pushing the bill a little closer. "Go on, take it. It's no big deal, just a gift." Lucas, with the same calm look, raised his hand, not to take the money but to stop Roberto. "I really don't want your money," he said gently. And before Roberto could respond, Lucas added, "But there is something you can do for me." That caught Roberto off guard. It wasn't common for someone to refuse his generosity, let alone ask for something in return. He frowned, intrigued. "What do you want then?" Lucas adjusted himself on the grass, still peaceful, as if he were about to ask a simple question, but his voice carried a seriousness that took Roberto by surprise. "I want you to spend a day with me, that's all." "A day?" Roberto repeated, puzzled. What did this kid have in mind? Was it a prank? A trick? Roberto's mind, trained to deal with contracts and manipulations, tried to figure out what the boy's request really meant. Why would a poor boy turn down money and ask for something so strange? "Yes," Lucas continued, looking him in the eyes as if he were waiting to see the answer within Roberto. "I want you to understand what's truly important. Spend a day with me and maybe you'll find out." The request was an unexpected challenge. Roberto, always used to controlling situations, giving quick answers, and maintaining power over every interaction, suddenly found himself in a vulnerable position. He had never been questioned like this. No one had ever challenged his way of seeing the world, especially not a kid. Curious and perhaps a bit irritated by his inability to fully grasp Lucas's logic, Roberto let out a brief laugh, shaking his head. "All right," he replied, crossing his arms. "A day. Let's see where this takes us." The smile that appeared on Lucas's face wasn't one of satisfaction but of gratitude. "You'll see," he replied softly, and somehow those words left Roberto unsettled. The sound of Roberto's footsteps echoed on the cobblestone streets as he followed Lucas through the simple neighborhood. The contrast with the glass and steel buildings he frequented daily was striking. As they walked, the worn-down brick houses and graffiti-covered walls seemed to tell stories of silent struggles. "This is where I live," Lucas said with a shy smile, pointing to a small, humble house where an old curtain fluttered in the window. "My mom does what she can." Roberto observed in silence, feeling like a foreigner in a world so far from his own. Lucas, however, seemed perfectly at ease, greeting neighbors with nods and smiles. The boy walked with a calmness that Roberto couldn't quite understand. They passed by a local grocery store where the tired-faced owner waved at Lucas. "He lets me buy on credit when things get tight," Lucas mentioned casually. Roberto nodded, unsure of what to say. In his world, debts were negotiated in boardrooms, not in sidewalk conversations. As they continued walking, Lucas started sharing small fragments of his life. He talked about his mother, a woman who worked 2 jobs to keep them together. She works late, but always finds time to teach me something or to talk with me. She says we need to keep our hearts strong. Lucas's words hit Roberto with unexpected force. It wasn't a dramatic story, but a life lived with courage and simplicity. Roberto looked around, trying to imagine Lucas's life. Every corner of that neighborhood seemed to hold stories of sacrifices he had never had to make. When they passed by an improvised soccer field, Lucas stopped and looked at Roberto. "This is where I play with my friends. We don't have much, but we have this." There was a sparkle in the boy's eyes, a pride that Roberto couldn't ignore. It was as if, for the first time, the millionaire was beginning to see the world differently through Lucas's eyes. As they walked through the modest streets, Roberto began to feel an unfamiliar weight in his chest. He, who had always believed in the transformative power of money, now found himself questioning his own beliefs. Lucas, with his calm demeanor and simple stories, had planted a seed of doubt that grew with every step. While the boy spoke about his mother's sacrifices, the millionaire found himself lost in his own memories. He recalled the long hours at the office, the urgent phone calls that interrupted family dinners, the canceled trips with friends, all in the name of a greater goal: success, recognition, wealth. But at what cost? The memories of missed opportunities began to weigh on him. His wife, who once loved him deeply, had drifted away after years of absences and broken promises. Close friends, with whom he had shared his youthful dreams, now seemed like distant figures, all for something he had believed was indispensable. He looked at Lucas, who continued to talk about his life with an impressive calm, and wondered, how can someone with so little seem so complete? The boy's words echoed in his mind. "My mom taught me that what we carry in our hearts is worth more than anything." Roberto felt each syllable sink deep. His eyes drifted to the horizon as he reflected on how many things he had bought to fill a void that never seemed to disappear. Does money really define success, he wondered. For the first time, that question felt real, more tangible than the contracts he signed daily. And, unlike what he had always believed, Roberto didn't have the answer. Roberto entered Lucas's small house with a mix of curiosity and discomfort. The space was modest, almost austere, but there was something in the air that he couldn't immediately identify, a kind of warmth, a feeling that didn't come from the walls, but from the people. Lucas led him to the wooden table in the middle of the kitchen, where his mother was already waiting with a warm smile. "It's not much, but it's from the heart," she said as she placed simple plates on the table. There was rice, beans, and a modest piece of meat. To Roberto, it didn't compare to the luxurious, extravagant meals he was used to, but the look of care and pride with which the mother served each portion made him feel something different. They began to eat, and the millionaire, who always associated meals with transactions and business meetings, found himself in a completely different setting. There was no formality, no pretense, just a mother, a son, and an unexpected guest, sharing a simple meal full of meaning. Lucas smiled between bites, telling stories about school and his dreams, while his mother listened attentively, her eyes shining with love. Roberto, who was used to eating lunch in silence, surrounded by assistants and computer screens, felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. The sound of laughter, the clear affection between mother and son, awakened in him a longing for something he never realized was missing. He noticed that the food, as simple as it was, carried a flavor he couldn't find in any expensive restaurant. Gratitude. And even though Lucas's life was full of challenges, there was something there that Roberto had never experienced. A genuine connection, an unconditional love, something no amount of money could buy. With each bite, Roberto felt his heart soften a little more. He was starting to understand that certain things in life, like that moment, like the way a mother looked at her child, were simply priceless. As the meal went on, Lucas's mother, Maria, began to share her story with a disarming simplicity. Her voice was soft, but each word carried the weight of tough choices and sacrifices that shaped their lives. "When Lucas's father left us, I didn't have much," she began, not with bitterness, but with a peace that Roberto didn't expect. "I had to decide whether I would work double to make sure he never lacked anything material, or if I would be present, here, watching every step, every achievement, every fall." She looked at Lucas, her eyes shining with pride. "I chose to be by his side. We don't have much, but what we have is enough. I always wanted him to know that love, support, and presence mean more than anything money can buy." Roberto, who normally didn't pay much attention to other people's life stories, felt the deep impact of each word. He, who had spent his life accumulating wealth, could barely remember his own mother, a distant figure in his memory, always overshadowed by his commitments and his relentless pursuit of success. She had been there for his few school achievements, the rare visits, but he had never experienced the kind of closeness and affection that Maria described so naturally. Maria continued, "I wanted Lucas to grow up knowing he is loved, not because he has the most expensive things, but because he's important just the way he is. Every effort, every sacrifice was so he'd understand that his worth never depended on material things." Those words echoed within Roberto like a deep resonance. His mind drifted to a time when his own mother may have wanted the same for him, but he had been so focused on success that he didn't notice. The connection Maria and Lucas had, that love, that presence, was something he had never managed to build in his own life. Sitting there, beside that family so simple yet so full of love, Roberto began to feel the weight of a question he could no longer ignore. What was he really chasing? After lunch, Roberto felt the need to be alone. He walked quietly to a more secluded corner of the park, where the sound of the leaves rustling in the trees drowned out the city's noise. He sat on a wooden bench, his gaze lost on the horizon, while his mind raced with new thoughts. The simplicity of Lucas and his mother Maria still echoed in his head. Roberto, used to million-dollar meetings, complex transactions, and high-stakes business decisions, now found himself facing something much deeper and much scarier. He had always believed that success was tied to numbers, bank accounts, and financial achievements. But sitting there, feeling the gentle breeze on his face, he realized there was something he had never been able to buy: inner peace, a true connection with others. He had always been the man who solved everything with money. It was easy. But Lucas and Maria had shown him something that money could never bring. They had almost nothing in material terms, but they possessed something that Roberto, with all his wealth, had never experienced: genuine love, a sense of belonging, and a tranquility he never knew existed. Even though Roberto had conquered the business world, deep inside, there was a void he kept trying to fill with more work, more goals, more money. The realization was painful. His whole life had been built around accumulating, but emotionally, he was bankrupt. The reality of his loneliness and lack of deep connections hit him like a punch in the stomach. As he watched children running through the park and families chatting around him, one question began to echo in his mind: how did I end up here? Lucas approached Roberto, who was still sitting on the park bench, his gaze lost. He quietly sat next to the millionaire, waiting for the right moment to speak. Roberto, still dazed by the internal revelations he had experienced, looked at the boy with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. "Why didn't you want the money?" Roberto asked, almost unable to believe he was posing that question. He, who had always seen money as the solution to everything, was now facing someone who refused it with the utmost ease. Lucas gave a soft smile, the kind of smile that seemed to carry wisdom beyond his years. "Because money doesn't make me happy," he answered with disarming simplicity. "I see what it does to people. It makes them forget what really matters. And what I have with my mom, what I feel when I'm with the people I love, that's worth more than any amount of money." Roberto fell silent. Lucas's words echoed in his mind. For so many years he had chased financial goals, numbers that in the end meant nothing compared to the simplicity of this boy. Lucas didn't see money as the answer. He saw the small things: his mother's affection, a friend's laughter, the calm of being present. as the true value in life. Roberto looked down, unsure of how to respond. The boy, whom he had once judged naive for not accepting his offer, had just taught him the greatest lesson of his life. The next morning, something had changed in Roberto. He woke up with a calmness he hadn't felt in years, as if he had finally woken up from a long dream. The clock on the wall no longer seemed to pressure him with its relentless hours and minutes. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't in a hurry. As he sipped his coffee, Roberto thought about Lucas's words. The boy's simplicity and depth echoed in his mind like a melody he had never really listened to before. Without hesitation, he picked up the phone and called his mother. It was a call he had long put off, always delayed by meetings and commitments. But today was different. The soft, aging voice of his mother on the other end of the line brought a warmth to his heart he didn't know he still had. After hanging up, Roberto began to list the other important people in his life, the ones he had neglected because of work, money, and contracts. He realized these were the people he should be valuing. He decided to devote more time to them, his friends, his family, the ones who had always been there even when he was absent, trapped in his ambitions. Roberto now looked at his fortune with new eyes. The money that once seemed like the end goal now became a means to an end. He resolved to invest in people, in stories like Lucas's, in causes that truly impacted lives. For the first time, the weight of his wealth felt lighter, as if he had finally found a greater purpose, a purpose that filled his soul. Roberto continued to stay in touch with Lucas and his mother, but the relationship they built wasn't about money. That wasn't what Lucas needed, and Roberto understood that now. He offered something much more valuable: his time, his attention, and something he had never considered giving anyone before: his life experience. Roberto became a mentor to the boy, helping him see new opportunities without, however, changing the simple and pure values that made Lucas who he was. They spent hours talking, walking together through the same park where it had all begun. Roberto helped Lucas develop his potential, introducing him to new possibilities, but always reminding him that true wealth lay in how we treat people and what we do with our time. Lucas, with his ever-watchful eyes and insatiable curiosity, soaked up every lesson. But he never stopped being the boy who had turned down money, choosing instead the company of a lonely man. One afternoon, Roberto watched Lucas happily running through the park, playing soccer with other children. He seemed so free, so light. In that moment, a sense of peace washed over Roberto. For the first time in his life, he felt truly rich, not because of his material possessions, but because he had found something no amount of money could buy: purpose, connection, and a new understanding of what really matters. The lesson was etched in his heart. Sometimes the greatest riches are invisible, hidden in the small things, in shared moments, and in the love we give and receive. Lucas's legacy, now a part of Roberto's life, transcends time and space, marking him forever. Did you like the story? Comment below if you did, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss any stories like this.